Deep in the void between galaxies, a massive structure drifted silently through the cosmic darkness. The Ark Eternal looked like a mountain turned inside out, its metal surface scarred by 500,000 years of micrometeorite impacts and stellar radiation. Inside its hollow core, billions of humans lived in a carefully maintained artificial world, their ancestors having fled Earth during humanity's darkest hour. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the observation deck, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. She was young by Ark standards, only 200 years old, but her eyes carried the weight of inherited memory. Every human born on the Ark knew the stories, passed down through generations like sacred texts. Earth had fallen to the Devourers, an ancient alien race that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space and broken dreams. The Devourers had appeared without warning 500,000 years ago. They came not as conquerors seeking territory or resources, but as cosmic locusts. Their ships were alive, breathing metal that grew like cancer across the galaxy. They ate everything: planets, stars, even the fabric of space itself. Humanity had fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. In the end, only a few thousand humans escaped in hastily built Ark ships, scattering across the universe like seeds on the wind. Sarah touched the cold metal wall and felt the gentle vibration that meant the Ark was still moving. They had been running for so long that most people forgot they were on a ship at all. The younger generations spoke of their floating cities as home, not as a temporary refuge. But Sarah remembered the old stories her grandmother told her, about blue skies and real sunlight, about oceans that stretched beyond the horizon. A soft chime echoed through the observation deck. "Captain Chen, please report to Central Command," came the announcement. Sarah sighed and made her way through the corridors. The Ark was so large that it took 20 minutes to walk from the outer ring to the central hub, even using the express walkways. Central Command was a sphere hanging in the exact center of the Ark, connected to the outer sections by long tubes. Sarah stepped into the zero-gravity chamber and felt her stomach float as she pushed off toward the command center. Admiral Marcus Webb was waiting for her, his ancient face creased with worry. At 800 years old, he was one of the few people still alive who remembered Earth's final days. "Sarah," he said, his voice heavy with something she couldn't identify. "We've received a signal." "A signal?" Sarah asked, pulling herself to a stop near the command console. "From who?" Admiral Webb activated the holographic display. A wave pattern appeared, complex and beautiful, pulsing with mathematical precision. "We don't know yet, but it's coming from the direction of Earth." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "That's impossible. Earth was completely destroyed. The Devourers left nothing behind." "That's what we thought," Webb said. "But this signal suggests otherwise. The transmission is using an old human encryption code, one that only the Earth Defense Force would have known." Sarah stared at the wave pattern, trying to process what this meant. If humans had somehow survived on Earth, if they had endured 500,000 years under Devourer rule, then everything her people believed was wrong. How long has it been transmitting? "That's the strange part," Webb said. "According to our analysis, the signal just started. 3 days ago, to be precise. It's not a recording or an automatic beacon. Someone is actively sending this message." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If humans had survived on Earth, they had been waiting all this time, watching, planning, and now, after 500,000 years, they were ready to make contact. "What does the message say?" Sarah asked. Webb's expression grew even more serious. "It's coordinates. Locations throughout the galaxy where other Ark ships are hiding, and it's asking us to come home." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. Home. She had never seen Earth, but the word still carried power. Every human in the galaxy dreamed of the blue world their ancestors had lost. "How many Ark ships?" "We've identified 17 so far," Webb said. "But the signal suggests there are more. Perhaps hundreds, all scattered across the galaxy, all carrying survivors from Earth's fall." Sarah looked around the command center, seeing the same mix of hope and fear in every face. They had always known there were other Ark ships out there, but contact had been lost centuries ago. The galaxy was vast, and finding each other had seemed impossible. Now, someone on Earth was calling them home. "There's more," Webb said. "The signal includes tactical information about the Devourers, their current positions, their weaknesses, their patrol routes. Someone has been watching them very carefully for a very long time." Sarah studied the data flowing across the screens. The Devourers controlled thousands of star systems now, their living ships spreading like a plague across the galaxy. But the information in the signal showed gaps in their coverage, blind spots where their attention was focused elsewhere. "Admiral," Sarah said slowly, "what if this isn't just a call for reunion? What if it's a call for war?" Webb nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I think it is. Someone on Earth has been preparing for this moment, and they want us to join them." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. For 500,000 years, humanity had been running, hiding, surviving by avoiding the Devourers completely. The thought of actually fighting back seemed insane. The Devourers had destroyed Earth with millions of humans defending it. What could a few scattered Ark ships do against an enemy that controlled half the galaxy? But as Sarah looked at the signal data, she began to see something else. The coordinates weren't random. They formed a pattern, a network that could surround Devourer space like a closing fist. If all the Ark ships worked together, if they coordinated their efforts, they might actually have a chance. "How long would it take to reach Earth?" Sarah asked. 6 months at maximum acceleration," Webb replied. "But that would use most of our fuel reserves. If we're wrong about this, if it's a trap, we wouldn't have enough power to escape." Sarah understood the weight of the decision. The Ark Eternal carried 2 billion souls, all the descendants of the original refugees. If they were wrong, if the signal was somehow a Devourer trick, everyone would die. But if they were right, if humans had really survived on Earth and found a way to fight back, then this might be humanity's last chance for freedom. "What about the other Ark ships?" Sarah asked. "Are they responding to the signal?" Webb activated another display, showing a star map with dozens of points of light. "Some are. The Ark Destiny responded yesterday, and the Ark Phoenix sent a confirmation signal this morning, but others are maintaining radio silence. They're probably as scared as we are." Sarah studied the map, counting the responding ships. If even half of them agreed to return to Earth, it would be the largest gathering of humans in 500,000 years. The thought was overwhelming. "Admiral," Sarah said, "I think we have to go." Webb looked at her with surprise. "You're young, Sarah. You don't remember what the Devourers are capable of." "That's exactly why I want to go," Sarah replied. "I'm tired of running from stories. I'm tired of living in fear of something I've never seen. If there's a chance to reclaim our home, to finally stand and fight, then we have to take it." Webb was quiet for a long moment, studying the signal data. "The Council will never approve it," he said finally. "They've spent centuries building a life here. Most people don't even think of themselves as refugees anymore." "Then we don't ask the Council," Sarah said. "We ask the people." The idea was radical. The Ark ships had been run by military command structures since their creation, with civilian councils providing oversight. But the ultimate decisions about their direction and purpose had always been made by the senior officers. To put something this important to a popular vote would be unprecedented. "Sarah," Webb said carefully, "you're talking about revolution." "I'm talking about democracy," Sarah replied. "These people deserve to choose their own fate. If they want to stay here and keep running, that's their right. But if they want to go home and fight for Earth, that should be their right too." Webb studied her face, seeing something that reminded him of the old Earth fighters. "You know what this could mean? If we go back, most of us will probably die." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "But if we stay here, we'll definitely never be free. We'll just keep running forever, generation after generation, until we forget what we're running from." The Admiral was quiet for several minutes, processing the decision. Finally, he activated the ship's communication system. "Attention all citizens of the Ark Eternal. This is Admiral Webb with an emergency announcement. Please report to your nearest assembly hall for an important message. Sarah felt her heart racing as people throughout the ship began to move. This was it. The moment that would determine humanity's future. Either they would continue their endless exile, or they would finally turn around and fight for their home. The assembly halls were massive amphitheaters scattered throughout the Ark, designed to hold thousands of people each. As Sarah made her way to the main hall, she could feel the excitement and fear in the air. Word was already spreading through the ship's informal networks. Something big was happening. The main assembly hall was packed beyond capacity, with people standing in the aisles and sitting on the floors. Admiral Webb took the central platform, his image projected to every screen throughout the ship. Sarah stood beside him, representing the younger generation that would bear the burden of whatever decision was made. "Citizens," Webb began, his voice carrying to every corner of the Ark. "Today we received a message that changes everything we thought we knew about our history and our future." He activated the holographic display, showing the signal pattern and its source. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as they realized what they were seeing. This transmission comes from Earth. From humans who have apparently survived 500,000 years under devourer occupation. The hall erupted in voices as people struggled to process this information. Webb waited for quiet before continuing. "The message contains coordinates for other Ark ships throughout the galaxy, and tactical information about our enemies. But most importantly, it contains an invitation to come home." Sarah watched the faces in the crowd, seeing the same mix of emotions she had felt. Hope, fear, excitement, terror, all warring with each other. These people had been born in exile, raised on stories of a lost world they would never see. Now they were being offered a chance to reclaim it. "However," Webb continued, "returning to Earth means war. The devourers still control our home system, and they won't give it up without a fight. If we choose this path, many of us will die, perhaps all of us." The hall was completely silent now. Everyone understood the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about going home. This was about choosing between safety and freedom, between survival and dignity. "For this reason," Webb said, "I'm putting this decision to a vote. Every citizen of the Ark has the right to choose our future. We can continue our current course, finding a new world where we can live in peace, or we can turn around and fight for the world we left behind." Sarah stepped forward. "I know this is scary," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the ship. "I know we've built lives here, created families and communities. But I also know that we've never stopped dreaming of home. Every child born on this ship grows up hearing stories of blue skies and green forests. We carry Earth in our hearts, even though we've never seen it." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "I'm not asking you to throw your lives away for a dream. I'm asking you to consider that some things are worth fighting for. That freedom might be worth the risk." The debate that followed lasted for hours. People argued passionately on both sides, sharing stories and fears, hopes and concerns. Some spoke of the comfortable life they had built on the Ark, the safety and security they would be giving up. Others talked about their children and grandchildren, wondering what kind of future they would have as eternal refugees. But gradually, Sarah began to see a consensus forming. It wasn't unanimous, but it was clear. The desire for home, for the chance to finally stop running, was stronger than the fear of death. When the vote was finally called, it wasn't even close. 73% chose to return to Earth. Admiral Webb nodded solemnly as the results were announced. "Then it's decided. We set course for home. All department heads report for emergency planning sessions. We have 6 months to prepare for war." As the assembly hall began to empty, Sarah remained on the platform, staring out at the emptying seats. In 6 months, they would reach Earth. They would see the blue world of legend, the home their ancestors had died defending, and they would either reclaim it or die in the attempt. For the first time in 500,000 years, humanity was going home. The void station appeared before them like a metallic flower blooming in the darkness of space. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Hundreds of Ark ships from across the galaxy were docked to a massive central hub, their different designs telling the story of humanity's scattered exodus. Some were sleek and modern, built by refugees who had found rich mineral worlds to exploit. Others were patched and worn, held together by determination and hope. Admiral Webb guided the Ark Eternal into position, their massive ship dwarfing some of the smaller vessels. Through the viewport, Sarah could see people moving through transparent connecting tubes, humans from a dozen different worlds finally coming together after centuries of separation. "I count 412 ships," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the navigation station. "And they're still arriving." Sarah felt a chill of excitement run down her spine. She had hoped for dozens of ships to answer the call. The reality was beyond her wildest dreams. "How many people is that?" "Preliminary estimates suggest over 50 billion souls," Torres replied, his voice filled with awe. "It's the largest gathering of humans in recorded history." The communication panel crackled to life. "Ark Eternal, this is Void Station Control. You are cleared for docking at Port 7. Welcome home, cousins." The voice carried an accent Sarah had never heard before, melodic and strange. As their ship connected to the station, she realized she was about to meet humans who had developed in completely different environments. Some had lived on high-gravity worlds, others in low-gravity environments. Some had spent centuries in deep space, while others had found garden worlds to call home. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Sarah stepped into the station proper. The artificial gravity was slightly lighter than the Ark's, and the air carried unfamiliar scents. The first thing she noticed was the diversity of the people moving through the corridors. Some were tall and thin, adapted to low gravity. Others were short and broad, built for heavy worlds. Their skin tones ranged from pale white to deep ebony, with some showing the slight blue tinge of people who had lived under different star types. But they were all human, all descendants of the refugees who had fled Earth 500,000 years ago. "Captain Chen?" a voice called out behind her. Sarah turned to see a woman approaching, her movements graceful despite the unfamiliar gravity. She was tall and elegant, with silver hair that floated around her shoulders in the light gravity. "I'm Admiral Keiko Nakamura of the Ark Harmony. We spoke briefly over the communication channels." "Admiral Nakamura," Sarah replied, extending her hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you in person." Nakamura smiled. "The honor is mine. Your speech convinced many hesitant captains to make the journey. Come, let me show you something that will take your breath away." They walked through corridors filled with reuniting humans, families finding relatives they had thought lost forever, scientists comparing notes from centuries of separate research. The energy was electric, a combination of joy and anticipation that made Sarah's heart race. They emerged onto a vast observation deck that looked out into the central hub of the station. Sarah gasped. The space was enormous, large enough to hold a small city, and it was filled with people. Millions of humans, from hundreds of different worlds, all gathered in one place for the first time in 500,000 years. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Nakamura said. "Some of these people have traveled for months just to be here. They've abandoned everything they knew, all for the chance to reclaim our birthright." Sarah watched children playing in the low gravity, their laughter echoing through the vast space. She saw elderly people weeping as they met cousins they had never known existed. Scientists huddled in groups, sharing research that had developed along completely different lines. Military officers studied tactical displays, comparing weapons and strategies that had evolved in isolation. "Tell me about the signal," Sarah said. "Who sent it? How do we know it's really from Earth?" Nakamura's expression grew serious. "Come with me. There's someone you need to meet." They took a transport tube deeper into the station, passing through sections that hummed with activity. Sarah saw manufacturing bays where weapons were being assembled, communication centers where coordinates were being plotted, and medical facilities where volunteers were preparing for the wounded that would inevitably come. The tube stopped at a heavily guarded section of the station. Security officers checked their identities before allowing them to proceed. "This area is restricted," Nakamura explained. "What you're about to see is known only to the senior command staff." They entered a chamber that was smaller and more intimate than the massive public spaces. In the center sat a figure that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. It was human, but unlike any human she had ever seen. The person was ancient beyond measure, their skin pale and translucent, their eyes carrying the weight of centuries. But what struck Sarah most was their clothing. It was clearly Earth-made, with designs and materials that predated the Exodus. "Captain Chen," Nakamura said formally, "I'd like you to meet Marcus Stone." He came with the signal. Sarah stared at the ancient figure, trying to process what she was seeing. "You're from Earth? You survived the Devourer occupation?" Marcus smiled, and despite his age, his voice was clear and strong. "Not just survived, child. We thrived. We learned. We prepared. And now, after 500,000 years, we're ready to take our world back." Quote, "But how?" Sarah asked, taking a seat across from him. "The Devourers were unstoppable. They consumed everything." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with intelligence that had been gathering knowledge for millennia. "The Devourers made one crucial mistake. They assumed that consuming our planet would eliminate our species, but humans are remarkably adaptable. When they began their feeding process, some of us found ways to hide. Deep underground, in the ocean trenches, in places they couldn't or wouldn't look." He activated a holographic display that showed a cross-section of Earth. Sarah was amazed to see vast tunnel networks, underwater cities, and hidden settlements scattered across the planet. "We became the Earth's immune system," Marcus continued. "Living within our own world, studying our captors, learning their weaknesses." Marcus continuation. "How many survived?" Sarah asked. "Currently, about 500 million. Not a large population by pre-war standards, but we've learned to be very efficient. Every person has been trained since birth for this moment. Every resource has been gathered and prepared. Every strategy has been tested and refined." Sarah felt her mind reeling. "You've been planning this for 500,000 years?" "Planning, preparing, and waiting," Marcus confirmed. "We needed the scattered arc ships to reach technological parity. We needed time to understand our enemies completely. And we needed the right moment, when the Devourers would be most vulnerable. And that moment is now?" Marcus nodded. "The Devourers have been expanding aggressively for the last 1,000 years. They've spread their forces thin, trying to control too much territory. Their attention is focused on new conquests, not on protecting what they've already taken. If we strike now, with coordinated attacks across multiple systems, we can catch them completely off guard." Admiral Nakamura leaned forward. "Show her the plan." Marcus activated a new display that showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red areas showed Devourer-controlled space, while blue dots indicated human positions. Sarah was shocked to see how many blue dots there were, scattered throughout the galaxy like stars. "The first phase involves simultaneous strikes on Devourer communication networks," Marcus explained. "Without their ability to coordinate, their individual fleets become vulnerable. The second phase targets their supply chains. The Devourers need to constantly consume resources to maintain their living ships. Cut off their food supply, and they begin to weaken." "And the third phase?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, she saw something predatory in his ancient eyes. "The third phase is where we take back Earth, with their communication disrupted and their fleets scattered. We assault the home system. But not just to reclaim our planet. To destroy their primary breeding facility." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Breeding facility? The Devourers reproduce by consuming entire worlds," Marcus explained. "Earth isn't just their conquest. It's their nursery. They've been using our planet to birth new generations of their species for 500,000 years. Destroy the breeding facility, and we don't just free Earth. We cripple their ability to expand further." The scope of the plan was overwhelming. Sarah tried to imagine the coordination required, the precise timing, the incredible risk. If even one part of the operation failed, the Devourers would be alerted to the human resistance. They would hunt down every arc ship, every hidden colony, every last survivor. You're asking us to bet everything on one massive gamble, Sarah said. Yes, Marcus replied simply. But consider the alternative. The Devourers will continue to expand. Eventually, they'll find all the hidden human colonies. They'll track down every Ark ship. Our species will become extinct, not through direct assault, but through slow, inevitable attrition. Sarah studied the galactic map, seeing the truth in his words. The red zones were growing larger every year. Humanity's hiding places were becoming fewer and more isolated. Running forever wasn't an option. What do you need from us? She asked. Everything, Marcus said. Every ship, every soldier, every scientist. This isn't a battle that any single group can win. It requires the combined strength of every human in the galaxy. Admiral Nakamura stood up, which brings us to the real challenge: getting everyone to agree. Over the following days, Sarah attended strategy meetings that sometimes felt more like diplomatic negotiations. The Ark ships had developed along different lines over the centuries. Some had become highly militarized, turning their entire populations into soldiers. Others had focused on science and technology, creating weapons that bordered on the miraculous. Still others had pursued peaceful development, building beautiful societies that had never known war. The military commanders wanted to strike fast and hard, using overwhelming force. The scientists insisted on careful planning and technological solutions. The peaceful colonists argued for attempting communication with the Devourers first, hoping to find a non-violent solution. Sarah found herself caught in the middle, trying to build bridges between groups that had been isolated from each other for centuries. She spent hours in meetings, listening to arguments and counter-arguments, trying to forge a consensus from chaos. The Harmony fleet has 300 ships, but they're all science vessels, reported Captain Liu of the Ark Defiance during one particularly heated session. What good are they going to be in a direct assault? Those science vessels carry weapons you've never dreamed of, replied Dr. Elizabeth Vance of the Harmony fleet. We've had centuries to develop new technologies. Our ships might look peaceful, but they can tear apart a Devourer vessel in seconds. And I suppose you've tested these weapons? Captain Liu asked skeptically. We've had opportunities, Dr. Vance replied coldly. The Devourers have found some of our colonies over the years. We've learned to defend ourselves. Sarah was startled by this revelation. You've fought them before? Dr. Vance nodded grimly. 3 times in the last century. They attacked our research colonies in the Andromeda Spiral. We drove them off. But the cost was enormous. This was news to Sarah. She had assumed the Ark ships had avoided all contact with the Devourers since the Exodus. What happened? How did you defeat them? We learned that their living ships have a weakness, Dr. Vance explained. They're incredibly tough and adaptive, but they're also biological. They can be poisoned, infected, or disrupted at the cellular level. We developed weapons that attack their ship biology directly. Captain Liu leaned forward with interest. What kind of weapons? Viral warheads that disrupt their cellular structure. Nanomachines that interfere with their nervous systems. Sonic weapons that cause their living hulls to vibrate apart. The key is understanding that we're not fighting machines. We're fighting animals. Sarah felt a spark of hope. If the Devourers could be defeated, if human weapons had proven effective against them, then Marcus's plan wasn't as impossible as it seemed. But even as the technical solutions came together, the political challenges remained enormous. Each Ark fleet had its own command structure, its own priorities, its own fears. Some wanted to wait for better opportunities. Others wanted to strike immediately. A few wanted to abandon the plan entirely and seek refuge in distant galaxies. It was during the 3rd week of negotiations that Sarah had a breakthrough. She was walking through one of the station's recreation areas when she heard music. Following the sound, she found a large amphitheater where someone was performing. The singer was an elderly woman from the Ark Serenity, her voice carrying a melody that seemed somehow familiar. As Sarah listened, she realized it was an Earth song, one of the old ballads that had been preserved in the Ark's cultural databases. But this wasn't just a recording. The woman was singing it live, with variations and improvisations that made it new while honoring the original. More people began to gather, drawn by the music. Soon, hundreds were listening. Then thousands. People from different ARC ships, different worlds, different cultures, all united by songs that carried the memory of home. Other performers joined in. A man with a guitar from the ARC Freedom, a woman with a flute from the ARC Hope, children with drums from the ARC Tomorrow. The music swelled and grew, becoming something greater than any individual contribution. Sarah watched the audience and saw something magical happening. The political divisions that had seemed so important in the meeting rooms faded away. These weren't representatives of different fleets anymore. They were humans, sharing the culture that connected them across the centuries. When the music ended, an old man stood up in the audience. Sarah recognized him as Admiral Chen of the ARC Victory, one of the most vocal opponents of the attack plan. "My friends," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater, "I've been thinking about home lately." He paused, looking around at the gathered faces. "We've spent so much time arguing about tactics and strategies that we've forgotten what we're really fighting for. We're not just trying to reclaim a planet. We're trying to reclaim our identity as a people." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes as she understood what was happening. This wasn't just about military planning anymore. This was about remembering who they were and why that was worth fighting for. "I've changed my mind about the attack plan," Admiral Chen continued. "Not because the tactics have convinced me, but because I've remembered something important. Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling, and right now, listening to the songs of our ancestors, I feel closer to home than I have in centuries." A cheer went up from the crowd, but Admiral Chen raised his hand for quiet. "But if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Not as separate fleets, but as one people. One fleet, one family." The next morning, the political deadlock began to break. Fleet after fleet announced their commitment to the plan, not as individual allies, but as parts of a unified whole. The military commanders agreed to integrate their forces. The scientists agreed to share their technologies. The peaceful colonies agreed to contribute their resources. By the end of the week, they had something that hadn't existed for 500,000 years. A united human government. It was temporary, focused only on the mission to reclaim Earth, but it was real. Representatives from every ARC ship and every colony met to hammer out the final details of what would become known as the Reclamation Fleet. Sarah found herself appointed as one of the junior coordinators, responsible for managing communication between the scientific and military divisions. It was overwhelming work, but she threw herself into it with passion. This was history in the making, the moment when humanity stopped running and chose to fight. Marcus appeared at her workstation one evening, his ancient face showing approval. "You've done well, child. Better than I had hoped." "It's not me," Sarah replied, gesturing to the organized chaos around them. "It's all of us." Once people remembered why this mattered, the rest fell into place. Marcus nodded. "That's the most human thing of all. We're strongest when we work together." The Devourers never understood that. They're individuals, each one focused only on its own survival. Humans create something greater than the sum of their parts. Sarah looked around at the massive, coordinated effort taking shape around them. Weapons were being manufactured and distributed. Ships were being retrofitted and organized. Battle plans were being refined and rehearsed. And through it all, people from hundreds of different worlds were working together, as if they had never been separated. "How long until we're ready?" she asked. Marcus smiled. 3 weeks. Then we begin the journey to Earth. And 3 months after that, we either free our world or die in the attempt. Sarah felt a mix of fear and excitement at the words. In less than 4 months, she would see the blue planet of legend. She would either stand on the world where humanity was born, or she would die fighting to reclaim it. Either way, the running was over. The Reclamation Fleet moved through space like a metallic constellation. Thousands of ships arranged in perfect formation. Sarah stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned flagship Unity, watching the tactical displays that showed their approach to the first target. The Devourer Communication Hub at Proxima Centauri. 3 months had passed since the gathering at Void Station. 3 months of intensive preparation, coordination, and training. The diverse human forces had been reorganized into specialized strike groups, each designed for specific types of assault. Sarah had been promoted to commander and given responsibility for coordinating the Scientific Warfare Division, the units equipped with the exotic weapons developed by the scattered colonies. Target acquisition in 30 minutes, announced Lieutenant Commander Torres, who had transferred to the Unity along with most of the original Ark Eternal crew. All strike groups report ready. Admiral Webb, now serving as overall fleet commander, studied the holographic display showing their destination. The Proxima system had been completely transformed by the Devourers. Where once there had been a red dwarf star with a few rocky planets, now there was a massive organic structure that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. It was beautiful and terrifying, like a living flower the size of a solar system. Dr. Vance, Admiral Webb called to the Chief Science Officer. What are we looking at exactly? ABU Sevar. Dr. Vance manipulated the display, zooming in on different sections of the structure. It's a communication array, but unlike anything in our databases, the Devourers have grown it around the star itself. Using the stellar radiation as a power source, the entire structure is alive, capable of self-repair and adaptation. Sarah studied the readings. How do we destroy something that can repair itself? We don't destroy it, Doctor. Vance replied with a smile. We reprogram it. Marcus Stone's voice came from behind them. The ancient Earth survivor had insisted on joining the first assault, despite his age. The weapon Dr. Vance refers to is something we developed on Earth, a biological virus that doesn't destroy Devourer tissue, but changes its function. Instead of transmitting their messages, the array will begin broadcasting our signal. Psychological warfare, Admiral Webb said with understanding. We turn their own communication system against them. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. When Devourer fleets throughout the galaxy hear their communication hub broadcasting human battle songs and surrender demands, it will cause confusion and fear. They've never faced an enemy that could subvert their biology so completely. The fleet decelerated as they approached the system's outer edge. Sarah felt her heart racing as the moment of truth approached. For 500,000 years, humans had run from the Devourers. In a few minutes, they would attack. Launch the stealth probe, Admiral Webb ordered. A tiny vessel detached from the Unity, barely larger than a person but packed with sensors and recording equipment. It would gather real-time intelligence on the target and transmit the data back to the fleet. If the probe was detected, it would also serve as a warning of Devourer defensive capabilities. The minutes ticked by slowly as the probe approached the alien structure. Sarah watched the data streams, seeing the massive scale of the communication array become clear. It was even larger than they had estimated, with tendrils that stretched millions of kilometers into space. Probe is at optimal position, Torres reported. Beginning detailed scan. The holographic display updated with new information. Sarah gasped as she saw what the probe revealed. The communication array wasn't just a passive structure. It was defended by hundreds of Devourer ships, living vessels that moved like sharks through the stellar radiation. Those are Guardian-class vessels, Marcus said grimly. Each one is the size of a small moon and capable of consuming an entire battle group. They're designed specifically to protect important installations. Admiral Webb studied the enemy formation. How many ships do we lose in a direct assault? All of them, Marcus replied honestly. The Guardians are too powerful for conventional weapons. But we're not using conventional tactics. Sarah activated her division's communication channel. Scientific Warfare Division. Prepare for Operation Prometheus. Launch molecular disruptor warheads on my mark. Throughout the fleet, specialized ships began launching weapons that looked like harmless meteors. The disruptor warheads were Dr. Vance's masterpiece, devices that could break down the cellular bonds that held Devourer ships together. But they had to get close to their targets to be effective. Guardians are responding, Torres reported. They're moving to intercept the warheads. Sarah watched as the massive alien vessels accelerated toward the approaching weapons. The Devourers moved with frightening speed and grace, their living hulls rippling as they changed course. She had studied recordings of these creatures, but seeing them in action was terrifying. Phase 2, Admiral Webb announced. All ships. Begin evasive pattern Delta. Make them think we're retreating. The human fleet began to scatter, ships moving in seemingly random directions as if they were fleeing in panic. Sarah had to admire the performance. It looked completely convincing, especially to an enemy that was used to humans running away. The Devourer Guardians took the bait. Instead of focusing on the molecular disruptor warheads, they began pursuing the larger human ships, their predatory instincts overriding their defensive programming. It was exactly what Marcus had predicted. Warheads have reached optimal proximity, Sarah reported, detonating in 3, 2, 1. Space lit up with brilliant flashes as the molecular disruptors activated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the Guardian vessels began to change. Their smooth living hulls developed patches of gray dead tissue that spread like infection. The aliens' ships weren't being destroyed, they were dying from the inside out. Direct hit on 7 targets, Torres called out. Guardians are losing structural integrity. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as the massive alien vessels began to collapse. Without the cellular bonds that held their living hulls together, they simply fell apart, breaking into millions of pieces that drifted in the stellar wind. Phase 3, Admiral Webb announced. All ships, converge on the communication array. Dr. Vance, prepare the viral payload. The scattered human fleet reformed and accelerated toward their primary target. The remaining Guardian vessels tried to intercept, but they were too few and too confused by the loss of their companions. The humans had achieved something unprecedented: tactical superiority over a devourer force. Dr. Vance's ship, the science vessel Archimedes, broke away from the main formation and approached the communication array. Sarah held her breath as she watched the tiny vessel navigate between the massive organic tendrils, searching for the right injection point. I'm reading the array's nervous system, Doctor, Vance reported over the communication channel. It's incredibly complex, but I can see the pattern. Preparing injection sequence. The Archimedes extended a needle-like probe that penetrated one of the array's main nerve clusters. Sarah watched the readings as billions of viral particles began to spread through the alien structure, rewriting its biological programming one cell at a time. Injection complete, Dr. Vance announced. Virus is propagating normally. Estimated time to full conversion: 6 hours. All ships, begin withdrawal, Admiral Webb ordered. Let's not overstay our welcome. Quote, the fleet began moving away from the Proxima system, leaving behind the infected communication array and the debris of the Guardian vessels. Sarah felt a mixture of elation and disbelief. They had actually done it. They had attacked a major Devourer installation and won. But their victory celebration was cut short by an urgent transmission from the outer perimeter scouts. Admiral, the lead scout reported, we have multiple Devourer fleets converging on our position. They must have detected the attack. Sarah felt her blood turn cold as she studied the incoming sensor data. Hundreds of alien vessels were approaching from multiple directions. More than enough to destroy the entire reclamation fleet. How long until they reach us? Admiral Webb asked. 40 minutes at their current speed, Torres replied. Marcus Stone stepped forward, his ancient face calm despite the approaching disaster. This was expected. The Devourers always respond to attacks with overwhelming force, but they're making the same mistake they made 500,000 years ago. What mistake? Sarah asked. Marcus smiled. They're assuming we'll stand and fight like we did at Earth. They don't know that we've learned to think like them. Admiral Webb understood immediately. All ships, prepare for emergency jump. Coordinates already programmed. The human fleet didn't wait for the Devourer forces to arrive. Instead, they activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished into hyperspace, leaving nothing behind but empty space and a confused enemy fleet. They emerged near the second target, a Devourer mining operation in the Vega system. Here, the aliens had transformed several planets into massive processing facilities, consuming the worlds to fuel their endless expansion. It was a horrifying sight, but also a strategic opportunity. Intelligence reports indicate minimal defenses, Sarah noted as she studied the tactical display. Most of their forces are still heading to Proxima, looking for us. Perfect, Admiral Webb said. All strike groups, engage at will. Let's show them what happens when they leave their dinner unguarded. The attack on the Vega mining operation was swift and brutal. Without Guardian vessels to protect them, the Devourer processing ships were sitting targets for human weapons. Sarah coordinated her scientific warfare division with military precision, using targeted viral attacks to shut down the alien machines while conventional forces destroyed the infrastructure. But the real prize was the intelligence they gathered. Dr. Vance's team managed to capture several Devourer data nodes, biological computers that contained information about their entire galactic network. "This is incredible, Doctor," Vance reported as her team analyzed the captured data. "We now have complete maps of their supply routes, the locations of their breeding facilities, and most importantly, their response protocols." Sarah studied the information flowing across her screens. The Devourers operated on a surprisingly simple principle. Overwhelming force applied without subtlety. They had never needed to develop complex strategies because they had always been stronger than their enemies. "They're sending everything," Marcus observed as he reviewed the enemy response patterns. "Every attack we make triggers a massive retaliation. They're pulling forces from all over the galaxy to hunt us down, which means other targets are becoming vulnerable," Sarah realized. "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "We're not trying to hold territory. We're trying to force them to chase us, while other human forces strike at their undefended positions." Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated across dozens of systems. The reclamation fleet would appear suddenly, strike hard at a Devourer facility, gather intelligence, and vanish before enemy reinforcements arrived. Meanwhile, smaller human forces emerged from hiding to attack the positions the Devourers had left undefended in their pursuit. Sarah found herself adapting to the new reality of warfare. The hit-and-run tactics were exhausting, requiring constant vigilance and split-second timing. But they were working. Each successful strike weakened the Devourer network while strengthening human confidence. "Status report from all strike groups," Admiral Webb called during their planning session after the 10th successful raid. "Group Alpha has neutralized 3 communication hubs in the Orion sector," reported Captain Liu. "Minimal casualties. Maximum disruption. Group Beta destroyed 2 breeding satellites near Rigel," added Dr. Vance. "The biological samples we recovered are proving invaluable for developing new weapons. Group Gamma has been harassing supply convoys in the Perseus Arm," said Admiral Nakamura. "We've managed to capture enough resources to supply our entire fleet for months." Sarah looked at the tactical displays showing their progress. Red zones that had represented absolute Devourer control were now dotted with gray areas where alien authority had been disrupted. It wasn't victory yet, but it was progress. "How are they responding?" Admiral Webb asked Marcus. The Ancient Earth survivor activated a holographic display showing Devourer fleet movements. "They're adapting faster than I expected. Look at these patterns." Sarah studied the display and saw what Marcus meant. Instead of the random, overwhelming responses they had observed initially, the Devourer fleets were beginning to coordinate their movements, setting traps, and trying to predict human targets. "They're learning," she said with concern. "Of course they are," Marcus replied. "They're intelligent creatures, not animals. We've been hurting them, and they're starting to understand how, which means it's time for the next phase of our plan." Sarah felt a chill of anticipation. "Earth?" Marcus nodded solemnly. "The final approach begins now. But be warned. The closer we get to our home system, the more dangerous this becomes. The Devourers have had 500,000 years to turn Earth into their perfect fortress. What we've faced so far is nothing compared to what's waiting for us there." Admiral Webb activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Webb. Set course for the Sol system. It's time to go home." As the reclamation fleet prepared for the final phase of their mission, Sarah found herself thinking about what they would find when they reached Earth. Would the blue planet of legend still exist? Or had the Devourers consumed it completely? Would the human resistance that Marcus claimed to represent still be alive after all these centuries? Most importantly, Would they be strong enough to reclaim the world where humanity was born? She looked around the bridge at her fellow officers, seeing the same mixture of hope and fear in their faces. They had come farther than anyone had imagined possible. They had proved that humans could fight back against the Devourers and win. Now came the ultimate test. In 3 days, they would reach Earth. They would either liberate their homeworld or die in the attempt. But whatever happened, Sarah knew that humanity would never again be the same. They had stopped running. They had remembered how to fight, and they were going home. The Sol system appeared before them like a nightmare made real. Where once there had been 9 planets orbiting a yellow star, now there was a living organism the size of a solar system. The Devourers had grown their breeding facility around Earth itself, creating a massive biological structure that pulsed with alien life. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Unity, tears streaming down her face as she stared at what remained of humanity's birth world. Through the telescope displays, she could see that Earth still existed at the center of the organic mass. But it was almost completely covered by a writhing shell of alien tissue. "My God," whispered Admiral Webb, his voice breaking. "What have they done?" Marcus Stone stepped forward, his ancient face grim but determined. "They've turned our world into an incubator. That shell generates millions of new devourer organisms every year. It's the source of their expansion across the galaxy." Dr. Vance was studying the sensor readings, her scientific mind trying to process the enormity of what they faced. "The structure is massive beyond calculation. It would take our entire fleet years to break through that shell, even if it wasn't defended." "It's defended," Torres reported grimly. "I'm reading thousands of Guardian vessels, plus structures I can't even identify. This isn't just a breeding facility. It's the most heavily fortified position in the galaxy." Sarah felt despair creeping into her heart. They had come so far, fought so hard, only to find that their home was protected by defenses that made their previous battles look like minor skirmishes. How could they possibly succeed against such overwhelming force? But Marcus was smiling, his eyes bright with anticipation. "Perfect. They've done exactly what we hoped they would do." "What do you mean?" Admiral Webb asked. "They've concentrated all their forces in one place," Marcus explained. "Every Guardian vessel, every defensive system, every Devourer leader. They're all here, protecting their most precious asset." Sarah began to understand. "If we can destroy this facility, we don't just free Earth," Marcus confirmed. "We eliminate their ability to reproduce and cripple every Devourer fleet in the galaxy. But first, we need to make contact with the Resistance." He activated a communication array that Sarah had never seen before, broadcasting on frequencies that predated the Exodus. For several minutes, there was only static. Then, gradually, a response began to emerge from the background noise. "Unity, this is Earthbase Alpha. Welcome home, cousins." The voice carried an accent similar to Marcus's, but younger and stronger. Admiral Webb leaned forward eagerly. "Earthbase Alpha. This is Admiral Webb of the Reclamation Fleet. What's your status?" "Alive, armed, and ready for the fight of our lives," came the reply. "We've been monitoring your approach. Impressive work in the outer systems. You've got the Devourers thoroughly confused." Sarah felt a surge of hope. If there really were human forces on Earth, if they had survived 500,000 years of occupation, then maybe this impossible mission actually had a chance. "What kind of resistance are we talking about?" Admiral Webb asked. The reply came with a hint of pride. 500 million souls across the planet, all trained for this moment. We've got weapons, fortifications, and most importantly, we know every weak point in their breeding facility. We've been studying it from the inside for 500,000 years. Dr. Vance activated her communication channel. "This is Dr. Vance, Chief Science Officer. Can you confirm the nature of the alien structure surrounding Earth?" "Confirmed. It's a biological shell designed to protect the breeding chambers while using Earth's resources to feed their reproductive cycle. The structure has 3 critical weaknesses: the neural control center at the North Pole, the nutrient processing facility at the equator, and the primary incubation chamber at the South Pole." Sarah studied the tactical display as the Earth resistance transmitted detailed intelligence. The breeding facility was incredibly complex. But it was still a biological organism, and like any living thing, it could be killed if you knew where to strike. "Here's the plan," Marcus announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "The reclamation fleet will engage the Guardian vessels in open space, drawing their attention away from the planet. Meanwhile, specialized strike teams will penetrate the breeding shell and attack the critical systems from within." "And how exactly do we penetrate that shell?" Captain Liu asked skeptically. "It looks like it's designed to keep everything out." Marcus smiled again. "Not everything. It's designed to keep ships and large objects out. But it has to allow small organisms through for the feeding process. We've developed infiltration pods that can mimic devourer biology well enough to pass through the shell's defenses." Sarah felt her heart racing. "You're talking about flying directly into that thing?" "Not flying," Marcus corrected. "Being digested. The pods will be consumed by the shell's feeding mechanisms and transported directly to the internal structure. From there, the strike teams will fight their way to the critical systems." The plan was insane. It required perfect timing, incredible courage, and more than a little luck. But as Sarah studied the intelligence from Earth, she began to see how it might work. The Devourers had built their fortress to keep enemies out, not to defend against attacks from within. "I volunteer for the infiltration mission," Sarah said without hesitation. "As do I," added Dr. Vance. "And me?" said Torres. Within minutes, dozens of officers were volunteering for what was essentially a suicide mission. Admiral Webb looked around at his eager officers, with a mixture of pride and sadness. "I'll select the teams," he said finally. "But first, let's see if we can actually get past those Guardian vessels." The battle began at the edge of the solar system, where the reclamation fleet encountered the outer picket line of Devourer defenses. Sarah had never seen so many alien vessels in one place. They moved through space like a living constellation, their organic hulls gleaming in the distant light of Sol. "All ships, engage at will," Admiral Webb commanded. "Remember, our job is to make noise and draw attention. Don't get drawn into prolonged engagements." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. Thousands of ships clashed across millions of kilometers. Human technology and tactics pitted against alien biology, and overwhelming numbers. Sarah coordinated her scientific warfare division from the Unity's bridge, watching as molecular disruptors and viral weapons tore into the Devourer formations. But for every Guardian vessel they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The aliens were throwing everything they had at the human fleet, exactly as Marcus had predicted. "Infiltration teams, prepare for launch," Admiral Webb announced as the battle reached its crescendo. "Remember, once you're inside that shell, you're on your own until the facility is destroyed." Sarah made her way to the launch bay, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. She had trained for this moment during the 3-day journey to Earth, but no amount of preparation could really ready someone for what they were about to attempt. The infiltration pod was barely large enough for 3 people. Its exterior designed to mimic the appearance of a devourer-feeding organism. Sarah climbed inside alongside Dr. Vance and Torres, all of them wearing specialized survival suits that would protect them from the alien environment they were about to enter. "Pod launch in 30 seconds, came the announcement from the Unity. "Good luck, team." Sarah felt the pod detach from the ship and begin its approach to the massive organic shell surrounding Earth. Through the small viewport, she could see the alien structure growing larger, its surface writhing with movement that made her stomach turn. "Remember," Dr. Vance said, checking her equipment one final time. "Once we're inside, we have 6 hours before the biological camouflage breaks down. After that, we'll be recognized as foreign organisms and attacked by the shell's immune system." The pod shuddered as it made contact with the shell's surface. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as organic tendrils wrapped around their vessel and began pulling it inside. The sensation was exactly like being swallowed by some enormous creature. For several minutes, they were transported through biological tubes filled with digestive fluids. The pod's exterior began to dissolve, exactly as designed, revealing the reinforced inner shell that would protect them until they reached their destination. Finally, They burst through into a vast internal chamber filled with strange, phosphorescent light. Sarah gasped as she saw the interior of the breeding facility. It was like a twisted version of a living city, with organic towers and flowing passages that pulsed with alien life. "Target is 2 kilometers north," Torres reported, consulting his navigation equipment. "Neural Control Center should be in that direction." They began moving through the alien environment, using their suits' camouflage systems to avoid detection. The passages were filled with devourer organisms of every size and description, from tiny maintenance creatures to massive guards that looked like living tanks. Sarah marveled at the complexity of the biological system around them. Every surface was alive. Every structure served multiple functions. It was beautiful in its own horrifying way, a testament to the devourer's mastery of biological engineering. But it was also vulnerable. As they moved deeper into the facility, Sarah began to see signs of strain in the organic systems. The constant breeding and growth had pushed the biological infrastructure to its limits. The structure was massive and powerful, but it was also unstable. "There," Dr. Vance pointed to a glowing tower in the distance. "That's our target, the Neural Control Center." The final approach was the most dangerous part of their mission. The control center was heavily guarded by specialized devourer organisms that Sarah had never seen before. They looked like living weapons, all teeth and claws and raw aggression. But the human team had advantages the aliens couldn't anticipate. Their suits contained viral weapons that could disable devourer organisms at close range. Their equipment included sonic disruptors that could interfere with alien communication. Most importantly, they had the element of surprise. The assault on the control center was swift and brutal. Sarah and her team fought their way through alien defenses that seemed impossible to overcome, using every weapon and tactic they had learned. Dr. Vance deployed viral bombs that turned the facility's own immune system against itself. Torres used explosive charges to destroy critical structural supports. Sarah coordinated their movements with tactical precision, turning their desperate assault into a devastating attack. When they finally reached the central control node, Sarah was amazed by what she found. It was a massive biological computer, its neural pathways processing information from across the entire facility. But more importantly, it was connected to every devourer organism in the solar system. "If we can reprogram this," Dr. Vance said breathlessly, "we can turn every Guardian vessel against the breeding facility itself." Sarah activated her communication equipment, trying to reach the other infiltration teams. "Teams 2 and 3, report status." "Team 2 has reached the nutrient processor," came the reply, preparing to sever the feeding connections. "Team 3 is at the incubation chamber," reported another voice. "Beginning viral deployment now." Sarah looked at Dr. Vance. "Ready?" Dr. Vance nodded and activated the neural reprogramming device they had brought from the fleet. Sarah watched as billions of new instructions flooded into the control node, rewriting the facility's biological programming. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the breeding facility, devourer organisms began turning against each other. Guardian vessels that had been protecting the shell suddenly began attacking it instead. The facility's own defenses started tearing apart the structure they had been designed to protect. "It's working," Sarah said with amazement. "The whole system is turning against itself." But their victory was short-lived. The facility's immune system had finally recognized them as threats, and waves of defensive organisms were converging on their position. "Time to go," Torres announced, activating the emergency extraction charges that would blast them back toward the surface. The escape from the breeding facility was a nightmare of biological warfare and desperate running. Sarah and her team fought their way through collapsing passages as the entire structure began to tear itself apart. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of massive explosions as the other teams completed their missions. They burst through the shell's surface just as the reclamation fleet moved in for the final assault. The Guardian vessels that had been defending the facility were now attacking it, creating chaos in the devourer ranks. Human ships swept in to exploit the confusion, their weapons tearing into the massive biological structure. Sarah's extraction pod was picked up by the Unity just as the breeding facility began its final collapse. From the ship's observation deck, She watched as 500,000 years of devourer occupation came to an end. The organic shell that had covered Earth began to crack and peel away, revealing glimpses of blue sky and green land beneath. The massive biological towers that had processed the planet's resources crumbled into dust. The incubation chambers that had birthed countless alien organisms went dark forever. And then, as the last of the alien structure fell away, Sarah saw Earth as it truly was, scarred and damaged by centuries of occupation, but still recognizably the blue world of human legend. Continents she had only seen in ancient maps stretched out beneath them. Oceans that sparkled with reflected starlight. Mountain ranges that had stood since before humanity learned to walk upright. "My God," Admiral Webb whispered beside her. "It's really Earth." The communication channels crackled with voices from the planet's surface as the human resistance emerged from their underground strongholds. Cities that had been hidden beneath the alien shell began to activate their lights. Spaceports that had been dormant for 500,000 years came back online. "Reclamation Fleet, this is Earth's Central Command," came a voice that carried the weight of centuries. "Welcome home. You have no idea how long we've been waiting for this moment." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what they had accomplished. Not only had they freed Earth, they had reunited humanity for the first time since the Exodus. The scattered Ark ships, the hidden colonies, the underground resistance, all coming together at last. But their victory was bigger than just reclaiming one world. With the breeding facility destroyed, devourer expansion across the galaxy would halt. Their existing fleets would gradually weaken and die without reinforcements. Worlds that had been consumed could begin to recover. "What happens now?" Dr. Vance asked, joining them at the observation window. Marcus Stone smiled, his ancient face showing peace for the first time since Sarah had met him. "Now we rebuild. We heal our world and explore the galaxy again. We become what we were always meant to be." "And what's that?" Sarah asked. Marcus gestured toward the blue planet below them, where humans from across the galaxy were beginning to land and reunite with their long-lost cousins. Explorers, builders, dreamers, the species that looks at an empty universe and decides to fill it with wonder. Sarah watched as the first Ark ships began their descent to Earth's surface, their passengers eager to touch the soil of the world where humanity was born. Children who had been raised in artificial environments would finally breathe real air and feel real sunlight. Families separated by centuries of exile would be reunited at last. The war was over. The running was finished. Humanity was home. Over the following months, Sarah participated in the greatest reconstruction effort in human history. The orbital shipyards of Earth were rebuilt to accommodate the Ark fleets. Cities that had been hidden underground expanded onto the surface. The planet's damaged ecosystem began the long process of healing, aided by technologies developed during centuries of exile. But perhaps most importantly, humanity began to dream again. No longer constrained by the need for survival, they turned their attention to exploration and discovery. New expeditions were planned to distant galaxies. New worlds were identified for colonization. New technologies were developed that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Sarah found herself appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic colonies, responsible for maintaining contact with the human settlements that chose to remain among the stars. It was challenging work, but incredibly rewarding. Humanity had not just survived its darkest hour, it had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. Standing in her office in the rebuilt city of Geneva, Sarah looked out at Lake Geneva and remembered her grandmother's stories about blue skies and real sunlight. The old woman had been right. Earth was more beautiful than any simulation could capture. But what made Sarah smile was knowing that humanity would never again be trapped on a single world. They had learned to survive in the void between the stars, to adapt to any environment, to overcome any challenge. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and they would explore every corner of it. The Devourers had intended to end humanity's story. Instead, they had written its most glorious chapter. Humanity had learned that no matter how dark the night, no matter how overwhelming the enemy, there was always hope. There was always a way to fight back. And there was always a way to come home.